Right, ladies and gents, thank you for joining us for this week's Geotalk. It is in fact the last Geotalk of the year. So thank you for coming along for this and for your support throughout the year. It's been great to have you. And of course, it's been great to have the support of John Hancock's and CCIC, and all the people who are in the audience are enjoying beers courtesy of John. So thank you very much. And please feel free to join us next year when all of these talks will be back in person, but also virtual as well. And today's talk, we welcome Samir Mashhour to the Geotalk stage. Samir is a postdoc here in the School of Geosciences at Wits, working with Ben Hayes and myself. And Samir did most of his undergraduate and postgraduate training at the University of Tehran in Iran, and then came to join us for a postdoc between 2017 and 2019, and then went back to Iran and has been pursuing some independent research there with collaborators in Iran, and has come back to South Africa because he loves it so much, I presume, to join us for another postdoc. So we're very glad to have him back. And Samir, thank you for agreeing to give this talk. And we're going to hand over to Samir now. And as you'll hear, his talk is not based on South African geology, which is the topic of his postdoc, but on Iranian geology. Okay, Samir, over to you. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Dear colleagues, thanks you all for attending here physically or on the Zoom. And thanks from Geotalks for inviting me. Today, I'm going to talk about a topic that had recently become controversial on the evolution.
Let me just get this right for you. Otherwise. Okay, now you get to go.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to talk about a topic that has recently become highly controversial on the evolution of the Tethyan orogeny during Jurassic on the Iranian Plateau. So first, I'm going to tell you why Iranian Plateau is important to you here or other international audiences. You might think that you're wasting your time because we're in Africa. I'm talking about Iran. So Iranian Plateau is important because it is the only subduction zone that can compensate the opening of the Southern Ocean between Africa and Antarctica during Jurassic. And it is these are based on the ocean isochrone and paleomagnetic and paleogeographic reconstructions. So the controversy began when a group of scientists made a new interpretation on the ophilites or Tethyan ophilites on the Iranian Plateau, and they used the formation of Tethyan ophyllite in a fashion of Cordilleran type ophyllite. And they suggested that there were no subduction underneath the Iranian Plateau during Jurassic. However, unfortunately, the model leaves the Earth with an unknown present time geography in terms of the expansion of Indian Ocean. So what I'm going to do now is to show you a more realistic view of the Jurassic world at the edge of the Iranian Plateau in the context of the rise and demise of the NeoTethys Ocean. So before discussing the problem in more detail, I would like to have a brief overview of the Tethyan orogenic belt for those colleagues who are not familiar with this erosion. And we'll have introduction of the Zagros-Socha zone in Iranian Plateau, introduction of the San Andreas region zone. I will call it SAZI hereafter, and detailed statement of the problem, then argument for and against, a simple suggestion, and conclusion. So this is the Tethyan orogenic belt. It extends for 10,000 kilometers from Alp to Himalaya, and it is one of the most studied continental arc systems on Earth. Tethyan orogenic belt was formed by northward drifting of Cimmerian subcontinents, which divide the Proto-Tethys Ocean into two oceanic realms, the Paleogeography in the north and NeoTethys in the south. Then this is the NeoTethys Socha zone between Arabia and Eurasia, and the Socha is known as the Zagros-Socha zone in the Iranian Plateau, and it extends for more than 2,000 kilometers. And Zagros-Socha zone, as far as I'm concerned, is important because it's the only subduction zone that compensates the opening of the Southern Ocean between Africa and Antarctica and expansion of the Indian Ocean. Now let's have a brief look at the paleogeography of the Iranian Plateau during the evolution of the Tethyan orogeny. The early Permian to late Triassic is a time of Neo-Tethyan ocean opening along the future Zagros-Socha zone here. And the southwestern edge of the Iranian Plateau at the Zagros-Socha is called Sazi Arc or San Andreas region. And then we have the northward drifting of the Iranian Plateau or Cimmerian subcontinent, including the Sazi. And then we have the closure of Paleogeography Ocean in the north, and then subduction of NeoTethys oceanic lithosphere beneath the southern margin of Eurasia. And also this results in initiation of arc magmatism in the Sazi and rifts opening in the Southern Ocean Concordian, as I showed you earlier. Okay, then subduction zone continued during Jurassic, and NeoTethys was finally closed in the late Eocene by the collision between Arabia and Eurasian plates to form the Iranian Plateau as it is today. Let's have a closer look at the Sazi Arc. This is the Iranian Plateau sandwiched between Arabian plate and Eurasian plate. Okay, it's now better. And the subduction is still ongoing at the Zagros-Socha. Highlighted in yellow is the Sazi Arc, and is situated in the southwestern margin of Eurasia. The Sazi comprises of okay. The Sazi comprises of metamorphic rocks, metabasalt, metasediments, and volcanic rocks, granites, and are mostly Mesozoic in age. And based on the igneous activity, the Sazi can be divided into three main sectors: central sector, northwestern, and southeastern sectors. And the central sector is dominated by alkaline rocks. Also, northwestern and southeastern sectors consist of alkaline rocks, but with subordinate amount of alkaline rocks. The Triassic-Jurassic boundary of the Sazi is characterized by unconformity, and a thick continental sequence of silicic deposits with variable grades of metamorphism is known as the Shemtak Formation, covers most of the Sazi in Jurassic. There are two tectonic metamorphic events identified in the Sazi in Jurassic, and each began with the generation of S-type granitoid and was followed by I-type granite magmatism. What this suggests what we suggest with the integrating of existing geochemical and stratigraphic constraints is that there were two episodes of orogenesis cycle. First, the early stage from early to middle Jurassic, and second is the later stage from middle to late Jurassic. Each includes 3 phases of contraction, post-contraction, and extension to produce such temporal granite magmatism in this zone. 2 belts of NeoTethys ophylites marks the boundary of the Sazi in the form of outer and inner belt ophylites. The outer belt ophylites is in green. Here is Oman ophylites, these are Zagros ophylites, and also the inner belt ophylites is in pink. And the outer belt ophylites are coherent Oman-like ophylites, which is called Zagros Oman radiolarite ophylites, whereas the inner belt comprises of highly fragmented ophilitic melanges. And this slide shows the formation of the inner and outer belt ophylites. The inner belt ophilitic melange is a short-lived narrow embryonic marginal basing that the age is restricted to late Cretaceous. On the other hand, the inner belt ophylites are distinct. Sorry, the outer belt ophylites is distinct. It's called, as far as I'm concerned, Zagros Oman ophyolite radiolarite, and clearly forming an open, vast ocean with the age range from late Triassic to late Cretaceous, according to the sedimentary records. These type of ophyolites, the outer belt ophyolite, the formation has been widely known and accepted as Tethyan type ophyolite formation. You can see the abduction of the oceanic lithosphere over the continental lithosphere. So the problem began with a different view on the formation and evolution of the inner and outer belt ophyolites of Iran. And despite the marked contrast in the sedimentary age ranges of the inner and outer belts, some workers used igneous components and suggested the formation of Tethyan ophyolites as a Cordilleran type ophyolites in a 4-arc setting. And the model requires that the subduction initiation underneath the Iranian plateau to begin sometimes around mid-Cretaceous. And also to apply a 4-arc setting model for the Zagros ophyolite, the Southern Jurassic arc would be a pain in the neck. So they moved the Sazi from this part of the ocean to the another side. And they suggested that the entire Sazi was a fragment along the northeastern margin of Arabia, partially subducted underneath a contiguous sheet of inner and outer belt ophyolite, and then re-exhumed in a subduction channel and bisecting the contiguous 4-arc ophyolite into inner and outer belts. Recently, they have changed their mind, and again, they ignored Sazi as the magmatic arc and suggested an intercontinental rifting for the Sazi, and tied their 4-arc ophyolitic formation model to this rifting model. And they immediately called it the San Andreas fusion controversy, but they made the controversy by themselves. And in summary, applying Cordilleran type ophyolite formation to Tethyan ophyolites resulted in several distortions, in my mind, in the evolution of the Zagros zone in a Tethyan erosion. So there are 3 speculations. One, the inner and outer belt ophyolite of the contiguous sheet, subduction initiation in mid-Cretaceous and not early Jurassic, and also an intercontinental rifting of the southern edge of the Iranian plateau instead of arc magmatism in Jurassic. And my implication is that if you combine these 2 items, these 2 speculations, my implication is that they have put forward a weird tectonic model something like pre-subduction rift. So now I briefly discussed the most important drawback to each of these speculations, and but not going to go to the very detail, and will refer you to some commentary notes. The first problem is with the contiguous sheet ophiolites. The key to distinguish if the ophiolite has been formed in an open ocean or a marginal basin is sedimentary record and not igneous components. And as far as I'm concerned, the inner belt ophiolite, the age ranges is the age is restricted to late Cretaceous according to the sedimentary records, and definitely formed in a short-lived embryonic marginal basin. On the other hand, the outer bed ophiolites, a lot of radiolarites you can find with the age range of from late Triassic to late Cretaceous. So I refer you to the publication, to this publication at the top that discuss all competing hypotheses in this regard. The lower paper is just recently published and used magmatic components again and interpreted both in an outer bed ophiolites of the contiguous sheet, and they're being formed in vast ocean environment with a suprasubduction setting, but they ignored the fact that this might be the suprasubduction zone signature might be simply due to the heterogeneity of the NeoTethys asthenosphere by numerous recycled continental subarc or suboceanic mantle inputs. So I'm saying that using the igneous components are not reliable and should see the sedimentary records also. The second problem is that the model requires that the NeoTethys subduction began in mid-Cretaceous time, mid to late Cretaceous. And also, again, I encourage interested audiences to read this commentary note. And according to this note, the Cretaceous subduction initiation fails to explain plate circuit, paleomagnetic, stratigraphic, magmatic, and metamorphic constraints of the arc. And finally, about the rift suggestion. First of all, they use a local study, oversampled from the northwestern sectors of the Sazi, and they only added 4 samples from the central sector and extended their hypothesis from about 150 kilometers to 1,500 kilometers, and suggested that the entire Sazi has been formed by intercontinental rifting, which is not acceptable in my mind. And also, if it was rifting, where are the Jurassic to mid-Cretaceous shelf carbonate deposits? Or also, we can't see any huge amount of continental flood basalts, plume-related continental flood basalts, and also the equivalent mafic, ultramafic cumulates. None of these are supported by the lithology and stratigraphy of the Sazi. So we already wrote a commentary note, and you can find more discussion in them. And what we're going to do now is to furnish you with available geochemical stratigraphic constraint to argue for the Jurassic arc magmatism in the Sazi, and then put forward a new geodynamic model. This is some geochemical proxies to identify the source region and tectonic setting of the Sazi, mafic volcanic and plutonic rocks. And you can see that the most of the geochemical diagrams show arc setting with an influence of subduction components in the source. Also, you can see here is scatter of samples in arc and back arc basin fields. The trace elements of the central sector are also consistent with the subduction-related magmatism in the active continental margin. You can see the troughs here in niobium and tantalum, zirconium, titanium. And however, so it's in the northwest and southeastern sectors, these are characterized by, by a slight and variable amount of enriched of LILE with no significant depletion in niobium, tantalum, zirconium, or titanium. But with some exceptions of some samples from the southeastern sector that again show subduction-related signatures. And the isotopically enriched strontium neodymium signatures of the rocks from the central sectors, these blue diamonds of the central sector, suggest that there was a partial melting of metasomatized mantle. In contrast, the northwestern and southeastern sectors plot in the OIB field and somehow extend to the enriched side of the diagram. So in summary, our assessment of the available geochemical data corroborates the influence of subduction components in the evolution of the source region with some minor OIB type magmatic rock, which in my view is oversampled, especially from the northwestern sectors of the valley. There are also stratigraphic and paleogeographic constraints in favor of the South-Jurassic arc system. For instance, there are some Jurassic eclogite and oceanic blue schists that squeezed along the Douglas suture that indicative of early stage of subduction along the continental margin. Also, there is abrupt changes in the style of sedimentation in the South from shelf carbonates to volcanic rich sandstone deposits in late Triassic. The bonanites also provide additional evidence that subduction, that the South evolved from the passive margin to the subduction zone during the late Triassic to early Jurassic. And finally, subduction history of the Tethyan region has been interpreted from seismic tomography and plate climatic reconstruction. So I think these evidence are enough to conclude that the Saudi was an onion-like continental margin during Jurassic. So based on what we explained, we suggested a new tectonic model, which is an episodic subduction initiation in Jurassic in the context of our two tectonic episodes that we discussed. So we had a subduction zone initiation that involved periods of subduction and trench retreat that was interrupted by short-lived contraction events. And each of these stages were followed by small-scale OIB-type magmatic activity, respectively, in the first in the southeastern and then in the northwestern sectors of the Saudi. And this is the early stage and was characterized by flat slab, and that was followed by slab rollback beneath the overriding plate, and this caused the mantle-derived magma to upwell to generate S-type granitoids in post-contraction phases by melting a large proportion of sedimentary material of Shenchak formation. And the extension is the next phase, and lesser amount of sediments are available for melting. Therefore, the composition of granites lose their S-type character to I-type or A2 type signatures. And these three phases of the first orogenic episode was completed by slab tearing and slab detachment and alkaline magmatism at the southeastern sector of the Saudi Arch. The same three phases were happening in the second orogenic cycle, and magmatism again followed by the slab tearing. Magmatism was followed again by slab tearing, detachment, and alkaline magmatism, this time in the northwestern region. So you can. This is the view that we suggested for the zone during the Jurassic, and I believe that there is no need for rifting in an arc, and we can have a different rocks, tolitic, alkaline, and alkaline, and compositional diversity in our arc. And you can find more details of this model and more arguments here in our recently published paper in Litis. And so in conclusion, the outer belt ophiolite was formed in open sea. The inner belt ophiolite was, on the other hand, formed in a shortly narrow and baryonic marginal basin. The NeoTethys subduction initiation at the southwestern edge of the Iranian plateau was on early Jurassic and not mid-Cretaceous. Local OIB-like alkaline rocks in the Jurassic need not to be explained by continental rifting model. And also we suggest that the large-scale regional tectonic processes should not be inferred merely from the local observation, and that any proposed mechanism should be consistent with the regional geology and tectonic in the larger scale. And also we can see that how different beyond the formation and evolution of these Tethyan ophiolites in the Iranian plateau can distort the science, and also leaves the Earth with an unknown present time geography in terms of the expansion of the Indian Ocean as far as I'm concerned. So thank you so much for listening, and if you have any questions,
Samir, thank you so much for taking us on a tour of very different geology, which we aren't so used to here in South Africa. Let's just see if we have any questions. So let me try and lights on. Any questions from the audience to begin with? Okay, well, while we wait for the audience, we have a very quick question here in the chat window from Tony McCallie, who says, with many thanks, that was a great talk. Episodic subduction, this was how subduction was initiated, but my question is why subduction was initiated.
So I can answer this question with 4 words: Paleogeographic collision-induced subduction transference. So basically, we have the closure of Paleogeography in the north, and then because of the closure, we have subduction initiation of NeoTethys subduction initiation at the southwestern margin of the Iranian plateau. So to answer why subduction initiation, I would say it was because of collision-induced subduction transference.
Okay, fantastic. Then there's another question from Helen Edwards. The question is, what was the reason for these slab tearing events?
Well, that's a good question. I just skipped it in my presentation because of the time. During Jurassic, there was large spreading rich segments of NeoTethyan oceanic crust approached the trench, and this results in southwestern margin of region, and this results in tectonic coupling, and after that we had slab tearing, the asthenospheric upwelling, and generation of alkaline magmatism. And also after that, we have the rich subduction that results in the propagation of the tearing to the older lithosphere, the older part of the lithosphere, and this also resulted in the across arc, local, lateral, age progression, especially in the northwestern sector of the San Andreas zone. So I think I've answered the question. The reason for slab tearing is the approaching ridges to the trench.
Okay, fantastic. Do we have any questions in the audience here in the room? Okay, no questions yet. Let's just have a look if we have any questions in the Q&A. Just to remind everyone, you can ask questions in several ways in the chat, as you have in the Q&A window. I don't see any questions here. So if there aren't any other questions, I was going to end up with one last question, Samir, which fascinated me. What is the, more broadly in this area, what is the duration of magnetism? Because you're obviously dealing with an arc environment and a variety of different magmatic products. What is the duration of the magmatic?
San Andreas zone is, you have a lot of alkaline rocks, volcanic and granite such. All of them, not all of them, but you have a lot of Jurassic in ages. Also, there are some rocks, the opening of Lake Permian in age in San Andreas. And
that's a long-lived magmatic event.
Yes.
Several 200 million years, 100 million years.
I can say that it's Jurassic Cretaceous.
Okay. All right, good. Any other questions from the room? All right, you're off the hooks in there. Right, so thank you everyone for joining us. Those of you that joined us online, thank you so much. And for those of you that came to the talk as well, thank you. And this is the last GeoTalk, as I said, for the year. So thank you to all the speakers. For those of you that missed the GeoTalk, you can catch them on our YouTube channel and they're all up to date. So please do, if you are missing the GeoTalks during December and January, you're welcome to watch on YouTube and we'll restart again in February. So if anyone has any burning topics they'd like to discuss, please let me know and we'll sign off and say see you in 2022. Thanks everyone and thanks Samir.